Before we jump into today's video, I'd like to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Royal Match. Royal Match is a free-to-play match 3 puzzle game with thousands of unique levels. Your goal is to help King Robert build and renovate his castle back to its former fun, vibrant, and glorious form. Royal Match is the perfect game to unwind, relax, and dive into as there are no ads, which means less annoying distractions when playing. It is the perfect escape when you want time to yourself. The game also doesn't require an internet connection, so you can enjoy the game anytime, anywhere. Another great feature from Royal Match is teams. You can team up with friends or family to complete different levels, as well as compete for global or local championships. So make sure that you click the link in the description or scan the QR code to download the game for free and start your royal journey today. Tell your friends or family to do the same so you all can experience the royal treatment together. You know, when you think of Staten Island, New York, you're probably already thinking about the Wu-Tang Clan, which in my opinion is the greatest hip-hop group of all time. But one of the first hip-hop groups and R&B groups to make it from Staten Island was the Force MDs. They laid down the foundation first in that city. And what they also did for the music industry is bridge R&B and hip hop together. Because look, these guys could rap and sing. They were some of the first ones to do that. They was on some doo-wop meets hip hop type of music style or something. Michael Bivins from New Edition told them that he patterned his group Boys to Men style of dress after them. And don't get it confused, Force MDs harmony with lead singer TCD, they was singing songs like the older R&B groups, but they was just doing it in the 80s. Them boys is bad, man. Their story though is kind of crazy. They faced a lot of ups and downs and they lost a lot of members. Some say the Force MDs was also cursed like the group High Five. So let's get into their story, right? Now, see how the Force MDs came together, right? It all started with Stevie D, TCD, and Khalil, who were all brothers. And they were influenced by the Jackson 5 growing up, the Whispers. Their whole family was just a singing family. Their whole family grew up singing. They all used to sing in their stairways in the Mariners Harbor housing projects. And they used to sing so much that neighbors started complaining. Then their Uncle Jesse D ended up joining them. He was from New Brighton, but he ended up coming to live with them. And once he joined the group, that's when they changed their name from the Lundy Brothers to the Fantastic LDs. And they started performing locally everywhere in other neighborhoods. They was winning talent competitions and everything. Now, Stevie D was also in a rap group called the Force MCs with his friend Mercury and his cousin DJ Dr. Rock. Mercury had taught Stevie D how to rap because Mercury used to be out in the Bronx all the time. And he was witnessing the birth of hip hop at that time. And he wanted Stevie D to be his rap partner. And they called themselves the Force MCs. So Mercury taught Stevie D how to rap, and in return, Stevie D taught Mercury how to sing and harmonize. But then they got the idea to start singing on the Staten Island ferry so they could make some money from the people who was riding the ferry. Because on the ferry, there were all types of races of people who loved different types of music. They could go on there and just practice singing and get money for them. Because in the hood, they was just singing for black people for free. And one day, right, the legendary Mr. Magic, who was on WBLS radio, Mr. Magic Rap Attack. Now, Mr. Magic is also the first one to put hip hop on the radio. But anyway, Mr. Magic was riding the ferry to visit his sister who lived in Staten Island. And he heard them singing and thought they sounded good. And he had asked them, did they want to make a record? So, they told him, yeah, they want to make a record. And he took them to Tom Silverman house. Now, for those who don't know who Tom Silverman is, he's the owner and founder of Tommy Boy Records. He had artists like Queen Latifah, Stetsasonic, Naughty by Nature, African Bambaataa, De La Soul, Digital Underground, Coolio, House of Pain, and the list goes on. Tommy Boy Records was an independent label at that time. So Mr. Magic wanted to set up a meeting with Tom Silverman for them. But then Khalil ended up leaving the group. He left the group and he joined the Nation of Islam, and that's when they added Mercury to the group. So when that day came to meet and audition for Tom Silverman for Tommy Boy Records, they were all on the ferry, and that's when they saw Trisco. And they had told Trisco that they was going to audition for Tommy Boy Records. And Trisco asked, could he go with them? And you know what? They said, yeah. And the rest is history. Because Trisco was actually in another singing group called the Cook Corporations, but they had just broken up. So he was there at the right time on that ferry boat, y'all. Wow. So they get with Mr. Magic that day, and he takes them to Tom Silverman's house. And when Tom heard them, he loved them right from the gate because they sounded like a doo-wop group from the 50s. Tom Silverman was a big fan of Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, right? They had actually did the song Let Me Love You a cappella for him and a bunch of other songs too. Plus, they was rapping and beatboxing a cappella. And when they did that for Tom Silverman in the audition, it just blew his mind. Like, they can rap and sing. And that's when it was like, y'all was like a combination of two groups, a hip hop and R&B group, the Force MDs and the LDs. And he just put it together and called them the Force MDs. The MD stand for musical diversity. And he signed them to Tommy Boy Records. And in 1984, they released their debut album titled Love Letters. And look, on that album cover, if y'all remember, Tom Silverman had them with the letter F with them light blue sweaters on, just like Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers album cover back in the day when they had the T's on the sweaters. And the singles they had released was Let Me Love You, Forgive Me Girl, and Tears on that album. Tears, oh my. Now see, on the songs Let Me Love You and Forgive Me Girl, Jesse D and TCD were doing the lead vocals together. Well, they was going back and forth, trading off for the lead vocals. But when TCD recorded that song Tears and that high voice he's singing, that's when Tommy Boy decided to make him the lead singer. Tears, oh my God. That was a great song, y'all. I used to love that song. They said TCD did that song in one take. Wow. TC was a bad boy, y'all. With that falsetto he had, he was a bad boy. Now look, after that, that's when they ended up going on tour with New Edition. New Edition was hot at the time too. They had Candy Girl, Mr. Telephone Man, and all that out. You know what? New Edition was rapping and singing too at that time when I think about it. Wow. But anyway, so after touring with New Edition, they started working on their next album. And on December 15th, 1985, they released their second album titled Chillin', which hit number 69 on the Billboard 200 charts. Now, on this album cover, if y'all remember, they had on the fur coats and a bunch of gold chains. They was really from the streets. That's how they really wanted to dress anyway. And the single, Tender Love, man. Now, Tender Love, that single hit number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and hit number 4 on the R&B charts and number 2 on the adult contemporary chart. To be high on the charts at that time, you had to be good because Whitney, Madonna, and Michael Jackson were killing the charts. Tender Love, though, man, that song made a lot of babies, y'all. Tender Love, love so tender, holding me close to you, baby, I surrender. Oh my God. The way TCD sung that song, after that, TCD was forever the lead singer of the group. Now that's what you call baby making music right there, Tender Love. And now the song was written and produced by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, which gave them, Tender Love was their first crossover hit record. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, they already did Janet Jackson and SOS Band and all of them. They had hits on the R&B charts, but when they did Tender Love, that's their first crossover hit record right there. Plus, it helped win the Grammy. It helped them win the Grammy Award for the Producer of the Year. Now, Tender Love was also featured in the movie Crush Groove. They played it on the part when Sheila E. and Blair Underwood was doing their thing in the scene. You know what I mean? You know what's crazy? Force MDs was supposed to be in the movie Crush Groove instead of New Edition. But they ended up putting New Edition in the movie because at the time they were a little more popular though. At that time, New Edition was a little bigger. New Edition had performed in Crush Groove. New Edition had that song called My Secret. I used to love that song too, My Secret. That was a dope song too. And it's crazy because New Edition was supposed to do the song Tender Love. But, politics with their label prevented it or something like that. And I also heard Freddie Jackson had the song Tender Love first, but he turned it down. Wow. That's crazy. But that song Tender Love, man, it's a classic. Been sampled by so many artists, Bone Thugs and Harmony. They did it. They used the sample on the song Days of Our Lives for the Set It Off soundtrack. Alicia Keys did a cover, the Backstreet Boys, everybody, Usher. A lot of people did a lot of covers of that song. Now look, another single they released from that album that I love was called Here I Go Again. Oh my God. That was my joint right there. And I also like the song called Force MDs Meet the Fat Boys. I used to play that one too. But that album was very successful. It was a very successful album, especially for Tommy Boy Records. And Tommy Boy, Tender Love, when that hit, Tender Love ended up getting Tommy Boy a big distribution deal with Warner Brother Records. Yeah, it did. Now, look, that same year, they also appeared and did the song called Itching for a Scratch for the movie called Rappin'. Who remembers the movie Rappin' with Ice-T and Mario Van Peebles in that movie? I gotta watch that again too. But after that, and because of the success of the second album, Chillin', they ended up going on tour with New Edition again. But this time they had female R&B singer Sherelle was with them on the tour. Now, also around that time, drugs became real popular, man. It was the late 80s and drugs came into play. Jesse D, he got hooked on that cocaine and that crack, and he was out of control at that time. And, he wanted to go solo like Bobby Brown did when he left New Edition. You got to remember that this was the era when crack just destroyed everything. It was powerful. So, Jesse was just wilding out, and they had to kick him out of the group until he got himself back together. And he ended up doing 3 years in prison for selling crack to an undercover cop. After that, the rest of the group, they went back into the studio to record their next album, but they wanted a better contract from Tommy Boy Records. So that's when they hired Hush Management to help negotiate their contract with Tommy Boy Records, because it was a pretty bad contract, y'all. It was pretty bad. I heard one of the worst in history. That's what I heard. But Hush Management, they got with Hush Management, you know, and they was doing their thing at the time. Hush Management was doing their thing. They had clients like Freddie Jackson, Melissa Morgan, Kashif was there, and many more. So they got with Hush Management, and they worked out a better contract for the group between Tommy Boy Records. And in 1987, the Force MDs released their third album titled Touch and Go. And the single called Love is a House. Oh my. That gave them the first #1 hit on the Billboard Black Singles Chart. Love is a House is their first #1 hit song, y'all. And that was my joint right there. Love is a House and You Got the Key. Wow. Great song. Bring back so many memories when I hear that song, man. And look, that's when Madonna asked them to be the opening act on her Who's That Girl tour. They was traveling all around the world on that Madonna tour, the Who's That Girl tour. Now, they also around that time ended up meeting their idols growing up, which was the Jackson 5. They had actually went to the Jackson 5 mansion and they met LaToya and Joe Jackson. They had did an interview on a Big Face Gary show, and Stevie D and Khalil was talking about, said their father, Robert Lundy, who was also their road manager at the time, they had got into it. Robert Lundy, their father, and Joe Jackson had got into it, and they was about to fight at the Jackson mansion. Wow, that's crazy. But anyway, now, in 1989, they had a song on the Lean On Me soundtrack called After 12. In 1990, they had a song on the House Party soundtrack called Jive Time Sucker. Now, if you remember the part when Chill bumps into the table when Martin was DJing, and Martin told him stop bumping the table because he's making the record skip. The record that skipped was their song playing. Wow, that's crazy. Now, that same year, in 1990, they released their fourth album titled Step to Me, which really didn't make an impact on the charts. And that's when them and Tommy Boy started having more issues because, the label, Tom Silverman didn't want to pay for them to work with any big time producers at the time. They wanted to work again with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Teddy Riley wanted to work with them so bad at that time, but the label didn't want to pay for it. Man, if they would have had worked with Teddy Riley during that New Jack Swing era, I guarantee you they would have had some more hits. And also around that time, Trisco ended up leaving the group because he felt some kind of way, because basically everybody in the group were like real family except him. And he was feeling some kind of way about that. Plus he struggled with alcohol abuse, which was causing problems too. Then, the label, Tommy Boy Records, made them kick Mercury out the group because of his weight, which they claim he was almost 400 pounds at the time. But, Mercury also found out he had diabetes. And, Mercury left the group, and that's when he started his own label and discovered rapper Shaheem the Rugged Child. Wow, I never knew that. Mercury discovered Shaheem. So they ended up leaving Tommy Boy Records, having all them issues. And Tommy Boy was still putting out compilations albums of their music because they owned the material. Like on February 18th, 1992, Tommy Boy released a compilation album called For Lovers and Others, Force MDs Greatest Hits. So they left Tommy Boy, right? But they kept working on new material and was looking for another record label to sign to. And when Mercury and Trisco left the group, that's when Khalil came back. Remember I told you he had joined the Nation of Islam when the group first got signed. But he had came back to the group, and Jesse D was now out of prison. Remember I told you he did 3 years, so he was out of prison, and he joined the group, and they added another guy named Sean Waters to the group. And in 1994, they signed to a new record label called Noor. And on November 8th, 1994, they released their fifth album titled Moments in Time, in which Stevie D said that was his favorite out of all the albums they did, I actually listened to it. It was a pretty good album. It's a slept on album. It's a good album. And you know what? Mercury wanted to get back with the group because he ended up losing all that weight. He was taking his medicine. He got on a good diet plan. He worked out and got back in shape. And him and Stevie D was about to do a rap album together. They wanted to bring the Force MCs back. But in 1995, Mercury ended up dying from a massive heart attack. Wow. And he was only 30 years old, y'all. 30 years old. Rest in peace to Mercury. Wow, 30 years old, man. They said he had lost that weight too fast or something like that. Then the following year, DJ Dr. Rock died. He ended up dying from AIDS. In 1996, they was featured on the Wu-Tang Clan member Ghostface Killer's album. You know, the Iron Man album, man, that's a classic album, man. They was on the song Daytona 500. That was my joint right there, too. That Iron Man album is a classic, y'all. But then also around that time, lead singer TCD, man, was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. Now, Lou Gehrig's disease, also known as ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, you know, it's a nervous system disease that affects nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord and causes loss of muscle control and gets worse over time. They call it Lou Gehrig's disease after the baseball player Lou Gehrig, who was diagnosed with it in 1938. And the exact cause of the disease is still not known to this day, y'all. You know, TCD, he just started noticing weird things happening to him. Like, if he had food in his hand, all of a sudden it would just drop right out of his hand. He was just losing control of his body. Then he fell down the steps one day, and that's when they took him to the doctor, and they told him he had Lou Gehrig's disease, and it was terminal. Wow. It was terminal with a lifespan of about 2 years. That's crazy. And on January 1998, TCD died from that Lou Gehrig's disease. He was only 34 years old. Wow, that's sad, man. Rest in peace to TCD. What a voice. What a voice, man. He was so underrated. Underrated singer, man. Brings a tear to your eye, to be honest. He was so talented, man, with that one-of-a-kind voice. Now, in 2000, they signed with another record label called Mad Love Records. And on September 19th, 2000, they released their 6th album titled The Reunion. On March 20th, 2001, the following year, Tommy Boy Records put out another compilation album called Let Me Love You, The Greatest Hits. In 2009, President Barack Obama said in an interview that the Force MDs was on his Air Force One iPod playlist when he travels. Wow, that's a big shout out for them right there. President Barack Obama still listening to the Force MDs. But on September 16th, 2016, Trisco died. Trisco died from stage 4 cancer. You know, he was 53 years old. Rest in peace to Trisco, man. Wow. The following year, in 2017, they released the album titled Our Favorite Joints, in which they were doing a lot of covers of some of their favorite songs. But you know, they continued to tour and do shows all around the world. But then, January 2022, Jesse D died. You know, his girlfriend had found him dead on the floor. He was 58 years old, so rest in peace to Jesse Daniels. Wow. You know, it's sad because they say he still struggled with drug abuse at the time of his death, man. Man, it's crazy, man. They lost a lot of people, y'all. But you know, later on that same year that Jesse died, in August 2022, right? Staten Island gave the Force MDs their street name. Gave them their street name in their neighborhood called the Force MDs Way. which was way overdue, in my opinion. Because Wu-Tang Clan got their street name in Park Hill back in 2019. But I'm glad the city did that for them. I'm happy for Wu-Tang and the Force MDs. And a Force MDs official documentary was supposed to be coming out about the group, but I don't know what happened with that. So I guess it's still in the works though. So stay tuned for that. Stevie D got a book called Necessary Force you can buy on the Force MDs website. You can purchase that on the website. So make sure y'all support them on that. And I also heard about a play they had written or something like that they was trying to do for the group. And there's also talks about a biopic. And I heard Bobby Brown, what he say, Bobby Brown is supposed to be helping them make that happen. So we'll stay tuned for that. That'll be dope. And right now they still touring. Doing shows. It's just 3 of them though. It's Stevie D, Khalil, and their nephew, Zayn. And the Force MDs, man, what can I say about them though, man? Underrated group, hip hop, R&B, they bridged all that together. This group deserve their flowers. And I'm letting the world know right now, these boys were super talented, man. Wow, Force MDs. And rest in peace to all the members, Trisco, Jesse D, TCD, and Mercury. And y'all stay tuned for more episodes on Celebrity Underrated.